hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about, touching on this Paul Pelosi story. Man, the media is really crazy. Thank you in the comments, Justin. Said you love what I do. Thank you, everybody who pops in, who leaves comments, who tells other people to watch, tags, etc. That all is very helpful. I do very much appreciate everybody. We're going to be talking about Paul Pelosi and his attack, and how the media is reacting and how they're trying to use it. It's not going to be a tactic that works, but I guess whatever makes them feel better, even though the rhetoric that they're using to combat the rhetoric that they feel that the right is using actually just breeds more division and anger and probably violence too. So you can talk about that. Over the weekend, I think a week or so ago, maybe it's been a whole week, it was up. I was surprised that I won my appeal when I first put up a video about Dylan Mulvaney, and which, if you saw it on my thread, you've already seen the video, but I will play it, my response. But it was re-reported. And then they didn't give me a chance to re-appeal. They just took it down. So I want to talk about that today. And what's fascinating is that no one could disprove my point that I made in the video. They were just angry that I just didn't go along with their program. And also DHS, there's some leaks that have come out about some of the stuff they were doing as far as like their fight for misinformation or on misinformation, and also just censorship as well. Some stuff is from leaks, some stuff is from lawsuits that's been going on with DHS. So we're going to be talking about that. And it's funny how the two coincide with like the Pelosi story and the media's reaction to it versus like the whole DHS thing, because they're like talking about Republicans and the right and how they have conspiracies, and these conspiracies, and how there's a secret cabal and people want to control you, etc. All this other kind of stuff. How they talk down about that stuff, and how you're just inflaming crazy people to do all these things, which people who are not ill do tend to be susceptible to conspiracies and stuff, but not everything is a conspiracy. There are people who actually want to control what we say, what we think, and we already know that. Like I put a message or something on Facebook, and people are like, we already know, no, like, Christina, like, obviously we already know that they're like censoring us on social media, and then the government has a hand in it. Yeah, we already know that, but it's more evidence and stuff actually comes out. I mean, something that's interesting is that to some of these meetings where they're talking about fighting the misinformation, why is Chase Bank there? Why is Chase Bank there? Is it because they're going to move toward having more sort of people getting kicked off of banking not platforms, just banking? Is that a route that we're going to go? Because we're seeing it with some people, banks being like, oh, we're not going to bank with you anymore because of what you said here and what you said here. And there was a whole PayPal thing that happened. Is that, and if they did that in Canada, is that a route that our government's going to go? I think people need to know and ask about the stuff and think about the stuff. So we'll talk about all those things. So anyway, before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content that I have on my website, different articles, different videos. Make sure that you guys are sharing videos that I may pop up and post. I did posted one yesterday. I'm going to show you guys one that I made in regard to Prop 3, but it doesn't need to be about Prop 3. It's just like a abortion thing overall. I know perspective that maybe people don't look at the numbers. So there's that I did. There's different articles that I have. One I'm about going to drop, I guess, when I get off of here, regarding some of the stuff that we talked about on Friday. No bites from the op-ed. So, which I'm not surprised because they don't like Christina Caramo, and I do mention her in the article. And since I'm not thrashing her, I don't know. I I'm not surprised that there were no nibbles on it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and post what I already wrote on my website. So just check out that stuff. Go to the website. Make sure you're dropping in your email on the email list, and also make sure that you're following across all the different social media websites on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. All my handles are at Black Tea News, with the exception of Twitter. That one's at True Black Tea, which, by the way, that live action life site, live, one of the pro life sites just shared my stuff. Let me double check which one it was. It was lifenews.com. That's what it was. Lifenews.com retweeted my video, shared it. So I'm grateful that they did, and more people are seeing it. In that case, I don't care about people reposting that one. I just want more people to see the message. I want to thank Bride of Michigan Pack. I'm in their studio today. If I say something that triggers you, nobody certainly cares around this time anyway, but nobody cares. I'm the author and authority as far as what comes out my mouth. Yeah, I'm just in here using the studio, but I very much appreciate all the work that they have been doing and that I've been doing with them to help elect Republicans and fight some pretty terrible things that are going on in our state. So, or people are trying to make happen in our state. So I'm very grateful to them. And if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation to blacktnews.com/donate. I know it costs, everything costs, and prices are up, but it does cost to stream. It costs to run my website. It costs to use the software that I use. Some people are like, oh, your quality and your videos and stuff is so good. I'm like, thank you, but that's not free out of nowhere either, you know. So if you guys would like to help contribute and handle cover some of that overhead, I very much would appreciate it. And if you can't, I thank you guys for watching, sharing, commenting, etc. I don't have a meme of the day. I thought of there are lots of memes regarding some of the Paul Pelosi stuff that was just going crazy, but considering that some of the theories that people had initially doesn't seem like they're going to pan out, I opted not to use any of those because there's no new information, and it's doesn't appear to be what the memes and all the theories were. When I put out a statement, not a statement, but like a post on, was it Saturday maybe, I said the story is really weird, and that's all I would say about it because it was too early. There was too many things floating around that I couldn't confirm. Other people weren't confirming that the police said were wrong, or initial reports were wrong, and the press, however, the leaks were coming out and they're saying things a little bit like a third person opening the door. There wasn't a third person, and some other things. So I'm just, if I can wait for information, which the media doesn't do often enough, that's what I like to do, because I don't want to misinform anybody. I'm not perfect, but I don't want to misinform you guys, and two, I don't like to be wrong. I don't like to be wrong. So I definitely wanted to comment on it. So all I said was the story was weird, and but it's even weirder what the media is doing. They're like making fun of folks on the right for jumping to conclusions, which the stories that were leaking out, I don't fault anyone for going down the routes that they went. But so they got some of the details wrong as they were coming out. Stuff was leaking from the police and going to the press, and how stuff was reported in Politico and other places, for example, the third person, because they're like, who was the third person? And why is everyone in their underwear? And all this other kind of stuff. So we know more stuff. So I'm glad that I didn't throw out all the theories, though people left plenty of comments. So what happened? It doesn't appear that they were gay lovers meeting in the middle of the night. I guess you could always get more information, but he's a mentally ill person who is not a person on the right, but is prone to conspiracy stuff. He's a nudist who lives with very left leaning folks who have BLM flags and LGBT stuff. The neighbors describe them as left wing. And so the stories that the media is saying as far as him being someone on the right, radicalized by the right, and I even heard someone say like, well, yeah, he's mentally ill, you have to be mentally ill to do that, but was he mentally ill before, or was he mentally ill like afterwards he was exposed to all this stuff? And it's like, what? So the real story is that California cannot get their stuff together, and here's another example of someone who I guess probably doesn't need to be out in society at all, but they're mentally ill. Apparently, he's allegedly touched children in the past inappropriately. They tried to charge him for it, and the case just kind of fell apart. He's someone who is, I don't know, I think someone said that he can be nice, but he has like a monster within him. And so he's living out in this with some people, but he's a famous nudist, not famous, but like notorious nudist. And they do drugs and all sorts of stuff. And it's just weird stuff you hear in California, I guess. But he was prone to conspiracies, though the neighbors would describe his politics or assume his politics as more left-leaning. But he does have posts, or there's posts associated with his name that are into like QAnon kind of stuff. So the media is running with not like, oh, look, another, drug addict, criminal who got through the system who should have been held accountable for these other things. Talking about sexual abuse of children, staying with these people who do drugs and all sorts of other stuff. And they're saying the Republicans are bad. And there was even a video. Now this is on like CBS, and CBS is talking to a candidate from, I believe it's Minnesota, about one of his ads where he was at a range and he was firing a gun. And he said, "Fire Pelosi." And she's getting back and forth with him, wanting him to take down his ads. There's an election next week, and she's going to say, "Why don't you pull your ads?" So he fights back and pushes back on her rhetoric.
I never saw anyone after Steve Scalise was shot by a Bernie Sanders supporter trying to equate Democrat rhetoric with those actions. Please don't do that.
Okay. Looking at your candidates, Republican candidates have spent more than $116 million on ads that mention Speaker Pelosi by name in this cycle. If this is about the issues, why should you make it about the issues? Why not depersonalize it?
It is absolutely about the issues. It's about the fact that we have double-digit inflation, exploding cost of living. We've got a crime wave across this country that is the direct result. In this moment,
we are 8 days out. Don't you think this needs to change? Why not pull some of these ads? Why not just delete your tweet?
I'm sure people like to talk about anything but what the Democrats have done to this country, which, quite frankly, is exploding cost of living, a crime wave in our major cities that is the result of this defund the police nonsense and cashless bail. I mean, you look at New York City, where you put someone in jail at 9 p.m. for assaulting someone on the street, and they're back out on the street at 9 a.m. committing crimes again. You look at my state of Minnesota. Minneapolis has 6,000 assaults since the beginning of the year, Margaret. Those are the issues that are top of mind for every voter in this country.
Yeah.
That's why they're going to show up on November 8th, and that's why Republicans are going to win in the midterms.
That's what our projections are showing. But I would suggest more pink slips, fewer weapons in our ads in this environment. Sir, thank you for joining us. Face the Nation will be right back. Stay with us.
Man, she mad. She mad. 8 days away from an election, and you're ripping on him saying, take down your ads. The desperation is ridiculous with these folks. Take down. But he makes a great point. He's like, I mean, I wasn't born yesterday. I remember what happened on the baseball field. Some of those people who were there, I know some of the people who he tried to kill that day. And it was a crazy Bernie Sanders supporter. Rand Paul says he was screaming like, this is for healthcare, as he tried to shoot them. And nobody was like, hey, let's turn down the rhetoric. Nobody said, hey, it's Bernie Sanders' fault. It's the Democrats' fault for saying that Republicans are killing people because of the healthcare. No one decided to do that, but the Democrats did try to make it like a conversation about guns, even though, they all could have maybe been killed if Scalise wasn't there, because he had his detail with them. So, when it's in situations like that, you don't want to be the one who's a sitting duck. Criminals are gonna somehow find a way, because they're criminals. They're criminals. So they always went to their rhetoric. And Kavanaugh, of course, is the most recent example. You had someone who came from California, I believe they're from California, to come and try to kill him because of the Roe v. Wade situation. And there are people who are protesting at these justices' houses, which it was against the law. The DOJ didn't do anything, didn't enforce the laws, I don't believe condemned it. I mean, they'll arrest like pro-life activists. They're doing that. But people who like actually go and picket at justices' homes and try to intimidate them so they can change their vote, as opposed to just doing what's with the Constitution. They didn't do anything. But you know what? That folks want to operate that way anyway. They want to. They kept arguing about Roe v. Wade and keeping it in place because of the social implications or how divisive or whatever it might be, as opposed to what does it actually mean legally? Does this actually hold up? But when it's the other guy's side, or their folks like clearly doing stuff, like they were walking through 2020 with like see no evil, hear no evil. as far as like Antifa and their or BLM, they were hush hush on that. I can't just forget what life was like living through that, seeing all that stuff on a little bit on TV, because they didn't cover too much on TV, but the social media posts following those stories. There was they really shut that stuff down in Michigan, so you didn't see that too much stuff happening. But one day there were like marchers or whatever. I think some in like when I was following social media, they're like, oh, they're in Oakland County. I'm like, where? I'm being concerned, being very concerned. And I didn't live in a city or something that, got burned down like other places, but it was a dark time, and the Democrats were very mum on it. And gosh, I can't forget on the debate stage when I think this was the first one with Biden and Biden and Trump, and Biden was all like, I'm the leader of the Democrat Party. And I think they asked like, why don't you like call them and ask like them, hey, why don't you accept like the National Guard's help? And he's just like, who am I? I'm like, didn't you just say not too long ago, as if you have all this pull and you're influential and you're the head of the party? Like it. He's like, pick up a phone. How would I do that? Why would they listen to me? I'm only running to be the president. Whatever. But they knew all that stuff made Trump look bad, and they were trying to make Trump look bad, one, but they were also trying they were trying to like frame America as the ultimate evil, basically deserved all this animosity. But they also wanted people to have this impression in their mind that this is just also what comes with a Trump presidency. And if we elect Biden, things will be normal. Things will go back to normal. Things will be dull, and I want dull back in my life. I can't take all the tweets, but I definitely can't take the violence in the streets or all that, like the news, all the rhetoric. I just want normal. So that was another reason why people went ahead and voted for Biden, because they just thought he was going to be like a milquetoast, moderate, sort of boring candidate, and people didn't want all this sort of excitement with Trump anymore. They wanted something that was boring, and they didn't realize that they were going to get something like the Afghanistan exit and all kinds of and have to pay so much for gas and all that other stuff. They didn't expect that. They just thought maybe they could take a break, like the fact checkers have done since Trump got out of office, basically. So yeah, we were living in a crazy time. Crazy time. Someone said Instagram is down immediately after the leaks. I didn't notice that. I wonder how much chatter is actually about that, though. It's the tag is going though on Twitter for sure. People are talking about it. So the Democrats, I mean Biden and all sorts of folks are conflating and blaming Republicans for the Paul Pelosi attack. And again, this is a sick individual. And we have a lot of people who are, especially in California, who are not well, who are just out and about, sort of on the streets. And the best sometimes solutions you see from lefties is to either leave them there or, hey, let's confiscate some of your houses or hotel. Aren't they doing someone in hotels in California where they want, if the room isn't booked by your hotel is, they have to alert how many rooms aren't booked to allow like homeless people or other people to like go in the hotels. That's something that they're proposing, I think, in California right now. I mean, there's just really crazy stuff going on in that state. And people mentioning Nancy Pelosi by name and conflating her with other folks. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is not a good person who has good policies, and people associate her with a lot of negativity, with someone who's like just an elitist who cares little for the people, who will make sure she has her pocket stuffed, you know, before looking out for everyone else. People on the left and the right feel that way. So when you have a candidate who votes with her, like 99% of the time, that is worth mentioning in an ad. And so for CBS to be like, why don't you just stick to the facts? Why don't you just stick to the substance? This is a substance that they vote with her, that they are aligned, that they're not going to stand up against her. You know, that's relevant. You can't just not mention them. You can't just not mention them, which the people on the left wouldn't take that advice, like, oh yeah, I'm going to pull down all my ads and never mention Trump again, or never mention Ron DeSantis again, or never mention, you know, Herschel Walker or whoever. No one would do that. It was a ridiculous thing to ask of a candidate 8 days out of an election. 8 days out, but they just want to make it seem like the folks on the right and condemn the whole right, like they have done, well, a while now, but particularly since January 6th. And part of the things that, like, their rhetoric is so bad. Joe Biden has had such terrible rhetoric as president, not a unifier in the least bit. But here's like something from Stacey Abrams at a debate with Kemp, and how Kemp has all these police officers and everyone who's with him, you know, and Stacey Abrams wanted to push back on the, you know, and give a reasoning for why they're not with her, and she made it about race.
Club. So no, I don't have 107 sheriffs who want to be able to take black people off the streets, who want to be able to go without accountability.
How they say stuff like that, when they say stuff like that, or Jim Crow 2.0, or that back in the day when Biden said Mitt Romney's gonna put y'all back in chains, how is that rhetoric not inflammatory and creating more divides and more things that lead to, when there's some kind of hyper explosion of emotion like in 2020, helping to lead to that sort of destruction and more crime and more violence? Because if you don't want the cops there in those black and brown neighborhoods, they ain't got to show up. They really don't have to. And if they don't show up, that's just going to be more black and brown people who are terrorized by their neighbors. It's just the truth. So to throw that racial stuff in there, that doesn't help. We've talked about this before, but there was a Reuters data scientist who pointed out that the rhetoric from like BLM has actually led to more crime and violence. It's a pretty long article. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but if you Google like Reuters data scientist fired, Paul Krugman, maybe, or maybe not. No, absolutely not. It's not. I don't know why that name popped in my head. It's trying to find. His name is Zach Krugman. That's it. That's what it is. Okay. So yeah, we've he has a very long piece that's explaining like how he wrote up this blog post because he saw so many people within Reuters that was just reiterating talking points that didn't make sense. So he took the time to really go through it thoroughly, and people at Reuters didn't like, and Reuters is a huge news organization, right? And they didn't like the facts because he had posted it in their internal sort of blog or a social sphere, and he ended up getting fired. So he was working on a lawsuit, but he had good data, and it's not like he was the only one who came to that conclusion, because he also included other data from other people who assumed the opposite, and the facts led them to the same conclusion that he had. But so Stacey Abrams using rhetoric like that, as if the sheriffs just like exclusively want to take black and brown people off the street. No, they just want to take criminals off the street. And you know what? When you take criminals off the street, that's better for the whole entire community. I'm sorry, Stacey Abrams, but to just put it all together for race, it doesn't make any sense why people wouldn't believe that was inflammatory. It was going to lead to more terrible rhetoric. But when their folks are inspired by that rhetoric to actually go and do stuff, they're cool with that. They won't say a peep. They'll do whatever, say whatever that's going to help them as far as their electoral outcome. And the CBS reporter, you could tell, she's like, yeah, we are projected that you guys are going to win, and she did not seem happy about it, So I'm looking forward to Tuesday, though. Anxious isn't a good word. Maybe it is. I don't feel like physical sort of anxiety, but I guess it's still like anxious, because I know we're gonna have overall nationally a good outcome. I'm just very concerned about what's gonna happen in my state. Not like a physical manifestation of dread hasn't come over me yet. Just like mentally, it's like I have the concern, but I'm not as concerned as I was like a month or two ago, though. So we shall see. But speaking of their rhetoric, because they don't want people spreading conspiracies and all this other kind of stuff. DHS, there's these leaks. So there's a story by The Intercept, which is worth your time reading. That they have some leaks from DHS, but not just leaks. They also have stuff that has been obtained through lawsuits with the government as far as their censorship. We know they've censored different people on COVID information, and we've known that, but the government and stuff has claimed like, oh, well, we haven't coerced anybody into it. These social media companies are just kind of doing their own thing. So we've known for a while, and Zuckerberg confirmed not too long ago. He went on Joe Rogan's show and was like, well, the FBI just kind of gave us a heads up, like, hey, there's going to be some misinformation there, that and some kind of interference stuff that was like similar to the 2016, and just so you know. And when they, looked it up, or when there was a dunk or a dump, rather, that's what I'm trying to say, a dump of information, like the New York Post story about Hunter Biden. They're like, oh, this must be it. And then they blocked Facebook. I don't know if they totally blocked it on Facebook, but they restrained it. Twitter, of course, locked out the account. And so claiming it was hacked materials, it wasn't hacked materials, and it wasn't disinformation. And these hacks had all these people come together and say it was disinformation, even though the FBI had, that information earlier to know that it wasn't fake. They knew that it wasn't fake. And all these people went along with it anyway. So you do know that the government is playing, a game as far as some of this information. They blocked something that was totally true to help the person that they wanted to win, Joe Biden. They didn't want that to hurt Hunter Biden and hurt Joe Biden. So they suppressed that story. And it was an important story. And some people still insist that it's not an important story, but if it wasn't important, he wouldn't have suppressed it. So there's that. And it's not just that Hunter was doing things that were shady, but also his father was heavily implicated, which we've covered through on the show. But some of the other emails and memos and documents obtained are pretty interesting. So one thing, there was a text message from someone from Microsoft stating that basically people need to get used to, the tech companies need to get used to working with government, and they can't understand why everyone else isn't just going on board with it. There was JP Morgan's folks that are listening to these like trainings and conversations with the government as they're talking about this disinformation stuff. And so people are raising questions like, is the route that they're going to go, the route that they'd like to go, is that banks will take more initiative? Like, I'm sure there's not going to be like at first, like some kind of huge like statement from the government saying, hey, you need to deplatform people, not deplatform, but kick more people off of like banking if they spread misinformation. But they can read the tea leaves and take that initiative themselves, I guess, especially if they're having these meetings with the government and decide that they're going to kick people off, like their banking. Like Kanye, his bank decided that they weren't going to use him anymore. I think Andrew Tate and stuff, he got kicked off like basically every platform. And I think some banks as well in Canada, they decided to freeze like assets and stuff of people who were participating in the trucker protest. It was a peaceful protest. It was effective. But man, they really took some extreme measures to really shut down those people, which is lends to people trying to say that he's related to Castro, but I mean, he does look like him, but we'll just leave that conspiracy out in the air for now. We'll just always have the jokes in the very least. But we also heard earlier in the year that they're going to form this disinformation governance board, which that got a lot of backlash. So they pulled that back. But we know from lawsuits from people that the government was also like flagging particular accounts for like COVID misinformation, which is insane because so many things that they said was misinformation wasn't really misinformation. Were there crazy things that people were spreading and saying during the pandemic or about the vaccine that wasn't true? Yeah, of course. But they would flag people for just talking about how effective the vaccine was, even though it obviously wasn't 97 or in the high 90s, what originally, but people were saying at first. And as more information has come out, we just know that I don't even know how they got those numbers if they really didn't test to see what kind of spread it was having before it got produced and went out to the market, because they had to move at the speed of science. So a lot of this stuff that they're saying is misinformation, that they're trying to protect Pfizer and all these groups, it just didn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that they decided to put it on the childhood schedule either. That didn't make sense, but they still did it like 15-0 in the CDC. So you wherever you're watching this from, you better make sure that your state isn't going to force children to take that. And I'm sure that most people, like every state will have some kind of religious exemption. I don't think that it's fair that so many people need to have a religious exemption. People should be able to just say no, regardless of their faith, or if they have no faith. People should be able to say no. That bothers me. It bothers me so much, which they didn't want to really give out religious exemptions anyway. In New York, they really were fighting that. There was a leak from the I don't know if it was the DOJ, but from the Biden administration, as they were fighting people's different religious exemptions, and they thought that they were frustrated because they thought that people would have a good leg to stand on, because they did use like fetal cells to like at least test the vaccine. So people found that to be very unethical. So if they point that out, then they have a pretty good leg to stand on. But I don't feel that people, if they don't want to have something like that, they shouldn't need to say, "Hey, I'm a Christian," or whatever to get out of something like that. I don't think people should have to need that. Some other interesting things, though, that it wasn't just like COVID stuff that they were talking about, like curbing. Here's something. According to the draft copy of the DHS's quadrennial Homeland Security Review, the DHS's report outlining the department's strategy and priorities of the coming years, the department plans to target inaccurate information on a wide range of topics, including the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic and the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines. So that's not alarm. It's alarm bells, but we're aware of that. That's what they have done. The lab leak, it's all crazy stuff, and they wanted to undermine that because Trump was talking about it for whatever reason, even though later they're like, "Oh, you know what? That actually makes sense and could be true." And of course, they wanted to suppress people talking about the vaccine. But another thing, though, racial justice. What? Why does DHS need to be focused on people talking about racial justice? Because I'm pretty sure they're not talking about looking at folks like BLM, even though what they were doing during the summer of 2020 and stuff, that was domestic terrorism, and people will push back against that so hard. I'm like, these people come. And a lot of those people come to riot from even out of states, or they travel long and far. Like people talked about Kyle Rittenhouse because he worked in darn Kenosha, and he was so close to, he lived so close to where that was anyway. And then Gage, the guy who he got his arm shot, one of the guy who lived, he traveled further than Kyle did to be there. So these people were traveling, hopping place to place to participate in these crazy riots. And then I got into an argument with one person online, and they said that this should be like more targeted or whatever to achieve their goal. I'm just like, that's terrorism. And they just didn't want to accept that because I don't know, they felt their cause was justified or what they were advocating for was justified. I'm like, no, you're doing political acts of terror for your own end, for your political end. That is terrorism. So I don't know who they're targeting as far as racial justice to combat some of these I don't know, misinformation or different threats. But they also said that here's a crazy one. US withdrawal from Afghanistan. What? so they why would they need to combat inaccurate information on the withdrawal from Afghanistan? Like, and how do you plan to do that? What do you inaccurate how? Like, what, correcting the president who is like lying about stuff in real time? Like that, Jen Psaki? Are you like targeting, going back in time and targeting her, or you know, who are you targeting for this information regarding the exit of Afghanistan? Now, this was something that was a huge shift in the Biden presidency because a lot of people didn't see him as nice Uncle Joe. They saw him as like an angry, screaming old man who lacked compassion. Like Meghan McCain talked about, like how that just wasn't the Joe Biden that she recognized. So people started seeing him differently. So I think that's really, obviously it was a bad thing that happened, but that's really when you started to see his poll numbers and stuff go down. So what about them bombing the aid worker in Afghanistan because they said that he had bombs or something, and they're like, well, there was a secondary explosion when they targeted his car or whatever. No, he just had water canisters, not explosives, and he was bringing some extra water home to the people there in his town or village or whatever it was, and they killed him and other folks around him, including kids. And this was a man who wanted to come to the United States, and you killed him. And they're like, the strike was true. I'm like, the strike wasn't true, and you lied about an entire explosion. How do you do that? Were they not expecting New York Times to look into it? And it was a New York Times. I mean, I'm not saying other people didn't do the research into it, but they did a pretty extensive research into it and found out that it wasn't true. And then they had to be confronted and they had to correct it, but they penalized no one for that. No one. So they were lying. The Biden administration was lying about all the other kind of stuff. So who is going to fight against the misinformation regarding Afghanistan, and who gets to decide that, and what's going to be the punishment? Because we can't we can't trust these people. Like, these social media, it should be like the town square. That's why Elon Musk decided to take it over, because there's too much censorship. And people, a lot of things, bans and other stuff like that would go one way. So for the government to want to suppress information, or if they say just correct it, that's fine. But not from any standpoint of coercion or anything like that. They have TikToks and Twitter. They can do whatever, but they literally have people on calls, these kids with these huge TikTok accounts, so they can give information about Ukraine and whatever to their audience of millions. It's just really weird and creepy, and what these folks are doing. And another thing they said is the nature of the U.S. support for Ukraine, which I've seen that. It's so weird. And you know what? There was an interview with Trump. I don't know who Trump was doing it with, but he was talking about the Hispanic vote. And then someone retweeted and was talking about how Hispanics did not like the raid on Mar-a-Lago, and it ended up driving some more numbers toward Republicans. And the reason being is because it reminded them too much of basically this sort of authoritative regimes that they would flee from. So if you have political enemies literally coming at you to, raid your home and take stuff, it just rubbed people the wrong way. And this stuff, I think, is going to continue rubbing them the wrong way. And they're really gonna be very hurt, especially in different areas, for losing that Hispanic vote. They're talking about how Ron DeSantis might win Miami-Dade, that area. I don't know when's the last time that actually went to like a Republican. That is a really, really blue area. Now, they did flip I believe they flipped the school board in Miami-Dade like before, but they're really, really, really going to lose a lot of Hispanic voters. And you know what? They keep pushing it. Maybe eventually they'll lose black voters too, but Hispanics are leaving them in droves. One day you will look up and only see that the Democrat Party is just progressive white kids. And it's going to be hilarious. It's going to be hilarious. So anyway, I recommend just reading through the Intercept article. I'll go ahead and I know somebody actually already posted it in my comments on my post, but I'll go ahead and post it. But this is concerning because so much stuff goes one way. And the Hunter Biden laptop was crazy enough, but saying that they want to, I don't know, correct or whatever, misinformation on the Afghanistan exit, knowing how much they lied and how much they did wrong and how much Biden would flip, and regarding the situation on the ground, just insane. Lying about everyone who wants to get out will get out. Okay. Not true in the least bit. Okay. Next, I'm going to move on. I want to show you guys this video. Again, if you follow my Facebook page or my TikTok page or whatever, this video has now been taken down from TikTok, and it's about Dylan Mulvaney. He's the one who did a video for Alta or podcast talking about how he couldn't wait to be a mom one day and experience girlhood. First of all, you are a grown man. You cannot experience girlhood, even if you were, even if you could change your sex or your gender, you're still not going to be a girl. So it's so weird. Dylan has done videos like in hot pants talking about like people staring at his bulge, and he's just like, we need to normalize the bulge. Just really, really weird. He's so bad at pretending to be a woman. It kind of seems like he's doing a parody of trans people, to be frank. And so many people are like, Dylan's living her best life. Just, why do you got to be so mean, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it would be something if this man was just trolling folks. He is an actor. He was on Broadway. So he could just be doing it for clicks and notoriety, because he's certainly getting it. But I made this video, and it got reported. And then I won my appeal. I was a little surprised that I won my appeal.
I caused a boycott.
Hold on. So I was a little surprised that I won my appeal, to be frank, because I just know how these people are, these activists are. No doubt that it was going to get reported. I 100% knew that people were going to report it. And I've posted, stuff regarding these topics before and have lived and survived the report. And so they restored my video after I appealed it, because they said it didn't violate their community guidelines. And then when I survived the community guidelines, I will write in my comments, I won my appeal, and just have like an emoji with sunglasses on or whatever. Mostly not just to brag that I won the appeal, but also to like, I already won, so don't bother. Well, they didn't care. They went ahead and reported it again. And my sister said she thinks it's not just because people don't like the actual content of the video, but the fact that so many people agree with the content of the video as well. It probably triggers folks as well. I had people report different comments that I made to folks. So I think in the future, I'm just going to have to block a lot more folks, and not because I can't stand different opinions or criticism, which they weren't really criticizing. They were just kind of whining. Um, but they're so crazy that they just report everything, and I just need to protect my account more than that, I guess. But here's the video.
Apparently, I've caused a boycott of a very large retail chain simply for being trans.
If this person put bronzer on their face and decided to identify as black, we would cancel Dylan in a hot minute. But when this person wears hot pants and talks about how we need to normalize women having a bulge because Dylan has a penis, Ulta decides that we need to have Dylan on to talk about girlhood and how Dylan can be a mom one day. I find a lot of Dylan's content to be sexist and blatantly stereotypical of women's experiences, to the point where they seem kind of performative. Dylan is authentically Dylan. We can put it like that. But if Rachel Dolezal isn't a black woman, then I think you know what I think about Dylan.
So yeah, that's the video. And by the way, Dylan was not, people weren't boycotting Ulta simply because Dylan is trans. That's not how you would characterize that at all. People were talking about boycotting Ulta because they have a man. They chose to have a man come on to talk about girlhood, and instead of just having a real woman come on and talk about it. Now, you don't have to be a woman to wear makeup. I'm not saying men can't come and do whatever with Ulta, but you're deciding to go a particular way with your narrative when you do stuff like that. So he did get backlash, and so people didn't like what I had to say there. A lot of people did. Most people did. And then, like I said, I survived my first appeal, but then the second time they didn't even let me appeal it for hate speech or whatever. So I talked a lot with people in the comments, and no one could really refute my point. If you think Dylan Mulvaney is a woman for putting on a dress and wearing his hair long and wearing some high-heeled shoes, why don't you think that Rachel Dolezal is black? And people would say, well, race, well, they say gender is a social construct. Well, first of all, gender and sex, they are two different words, but they're meaningfully intertwined. And people are aware of that because that's why a lot of people go ahead and get hormones and surgery to meet the sort of biological realities that is a part of your nature and DNA based upon your sex. If it was just about your gender and how you identify inside of your head, then you wouldn't need to try to match up biological reality, and you definitely wouldn't need to demand that everyone else plays along. But they don't even really consistently go with their own sort of thinking, and they just need everyone else to be a part of the con. Okay, so or the delusion or whatever you want to say. So they didn't like what I had to say there, and they reported my video. But when I would say, even when I said something like Dylan, they're like, Dylan's just talking about his experience as a woman. I'm like, Dylan's not a woman. And something even like that comment got reported. That's how sensitive people are about this stuff. But anyway, let's go along for a second. The gender is a social construct, which, by the way, if it is a social construct, society has basically constructed the idea that sex and gender are meaningfully intertwined, and someone like Dylan is not a woman. So I think that's what most society would dictate. But sure, let's go along with that. If it's a social construct and that's why Dylan can be a woman, one of the tenets of CRT, critical race theory, one of the tenets is that race is a social construct. So if race is also a social construct, then how come Dylan can identify as a woman, but Rachel Dolezal can't identify as Black? There's also like someone who's, I don't know the name of the influencer, but it was a famous influencer who decided that he was Korean. And I saw a video where this Black woman was just trashing him because she's like, you can't be Korean, you can't just be a POC because you have white privilege, and you don't understand the social, privilege that you have, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, if it's about all these different experiences that you have of someone as a POC, then how come Dylan isn't disqualified from being a woman because he hasn't experienced life through the oppression of the patriarchy. He's been someone who's pushed it as someone who's been a man. Like, how come that same sort of thinking doesn't follow into the race changes? Because they want their social power structure for the people who are there, and if you're white, you can't belong to that. You're the oppressor. So they're allowing men to cross over into being women, because I guess maybe they do actually support the patriarchy, I guess, but they can't let you cross over into race, because even though they acknowledge that it's a social construct, they also need it because of the power implication and dynamics that goes along with their victim mentality. It's very fascinating, but no one would agree that Rachel, if Dylan is a man, then Rachel is Black. And obviously I don't agree with CRT, and I've talked about CRT a lot on this show, not so much recently, but CRT is one of the tenets that people agree on, that race is a social construct. So I think it makes a lot more sense for someone to say that they can change their race and change their gender. I think that makes a lot more sense. It makes a lot more sense to me. I don't think either is right, but to me, it doesn't make sense why you'd be for one and not the other. And no one can answer the question. No one can answer the question. So I'm gonna leave it at there. I just thought it was fascinating. I went ahead and put it on Twitter since that's a freer place now. But I put it on Facebook and I put it on YouTube, but it's not on TikTok. I'm not gonna re-upload it. It is what it is. It is what it is. But I'm probably gonna do a post about the emperor with no clothes. You know, that childhood story, that fable. I think there were some men who convinced the king that they had some kind of special fabric, and they were like, "You can't see it." And he's like, "Yeah, of course I can see it," or whatever. So he's walking around pretending that he's not pretending. He legitimately thinks he has clothes on, or is playing along like he has clothes on, and everyone is seeing him naked, but everyone goes along with it, and no one, questions the king, because they're all scared of the consequences of questioning the king. And eventually there's a little boy who's he's naked, and it just blows the lid off of everything. So nowadays, with this scenario, that kid would be censored for hate speech. And regardless of who you censor, the truth is still the truth, regardless if you want to hear it or not, regardless if you hide that information. Unfortunately, you can convince a lot of suckers to go along with false information. And people are like, "You're denying people's existence." I'm like, I'm not denying that anyone exists. One person, I said, I'm not denying that these people who are chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow are real. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that gender dysphoria is real. But I don't have gender dysphoria. You don't have gender dysphoria. So why can't you tell that Dylan isn't a woman? Doesn't make sense to me. Nothing's wrong with our eyes. Nothing's wrong with our eyes. We don't have some kind of disconnect in our brains. You're just choosing to go along with the narrative and punishing anyone else who won't. And that's fascinating to me. That's weird to me. It's creepy. And I hope we can get back to a place that makes some kind of sense, because we're definitely not there yet. But anyway, last thing I want to do before I go, I want to go ahead and show you this video, play it live, and please make sure that you go actually to you can go to my Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, Facebook, and actually share the video, and you can tag some people or whatever, but this one's really good. I mean, I like all my videos, but this one is really up there. So please go ahead and share this video.
For a moment, the great city of Detroit. Now imagine Grand Rapids, Saginaw, Marquette, Traverse City, Bloomfield Hills, Gaylord, and Sandusky. Imagine your friends, your family, your neighbors. Imagine every local elected official that you've ever voted for. Imagine every face, every smile, their laughter. Now imagine if suddenly everyone was gone. And with all those lives lost, it still wouldn't be enough to equate to 1 year of abortion in the United States of America.
Yeah, so please share my video around if you don't mind. There's comments about the about the glass, because it looked like it was broken from the inside rather than the outside, I guess. I I heard other people explain like there are videos and stuff that plexiglass can just kind of work like that, and you can look up videos of that. I mean, this person says it here at CSI, so they know, I guess, more about it than I would, but um the actual story that's going on is it not plausible. I'm not saying that the other stuff is impossible, but it could just be a crazy person broke into the house, and people are wondering, well, where's the security? Was the big security, whatever, follows Nancy. Nancy was at home. They could just release like there should be body cam footage, and there should be you would assume maybe there's cameras in the house, maybe. So if there's more information, they could just play it. But the narrative that they want to push is just that, one, I guess Republicans are crazy, and two, that Republicans drive up rhetoric that helps to drive up violence. So they're focused on the violence, not squashing a lot of stuff that I think people are really saying satisfying, what's going on. But as police reports come out, we can just look at those, and not so much the people are reporting it, but some of the early reporting is what helped to inflame a lot of different suspicions and narratives surrounding it. But he was hurt. Paul Pelosi, they had to do surgery. It's unfortunate. Nobody wants to be hit in the head with a hammer. That's quite violent. So not a fan of the Pelosi's, but obviously don't condone violence. And that man who committed the violence, he's mentally ill, very messed up. And unfortunately, California has a lot of people who are not well, just kind of roaming around, and they don't do much for the crime. I'm sure that this person attacking Paul Pelosi will get what they feel is coming to him, but a lot of the streets just aren't safe anyway, period. So that's what people should be focused on, not blaming good old Donald Trump and the people who voted straight party ticket. But that's the world we live in. Anyway, if you guys like the show, please consider going to blacktnews.com and helping to contribute. Go to blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, costs to get from point A to B, different software that I use, run my website, all that stuff. So if you would like to help, I'd very much appreciate it if you would be willing to donate, whether it's $50 or hey, you can do more, do 50 or something. That would be fantastic, and I do very much appreciate it. Please check out some merch that we have. I don't think I showed you any merch today. I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For. That one's a cool one. I got the Constitution is a Glorious Liberty Document shirt. Really like that one. And I guess we're getting out of pumpkin spice season, but before we go, I guess we still got a little ways because, but all right, today's Halloween, right? Yep, Halloween. You guys can check out some of the merch at the store. But God bless you guys, and I'll see you next time.